my second how to build video. Today I think I'm going to be addressing a problem that I think is important. You might not agree with me, but overcrowding and like how you put the shapes in your build together I think are a pretty big part of your build. And having over detailing, like kind of what I tried to do here, usually isn't successful, and it usually makes your build seem way overcrowded. Like with all these different blocks in this little area here, and with all of this stuff here, even though these blocks worked well together, they still seem to make the build like overcrowded. And there are things you can do to help this. But another thing is these shapes here, this doesn't really look structurally sound at all. It looks good, it's just like, even with Minecraft logic, I don't think this house would stand that well. But I do have some pretty cool examples of overcrowded and undercrowded, and how to keep your build simple. And I really do think that even though this is good, there are really lots of ways to help your build seem good without having to overcomplicate it, and also how to avoid making your build seem like you completely winged it, even if you did. So let's go ahead and move on to the first example, or first thing I'm going to show you. Other than that, we have some frame, and this is some framing. Sorry. This is kind of what I do before I start the build. I will lay out all this framing here for at least like one or two sides of the build, and then I'll go and fill in the area in here with blocks. And I do believe it is really important that you do have a frame before you actually start the building. Otherwise, shapes that are smaller when you start out with your build, like if I were to make a build and I had the door here like that, and I try to put framing in there, that just wouldn't really work. So it is important that you think about the frames in your build first. So here's that build, but I did a little building for it. As you can see, this door works out here. All the windows don't seem big or small or whatever. There is complicated shapes in this, but since I planned it out first, all the shapes work together some. As you can see, I didn't overcomplicate the roof like that. Even though it has a more complex shape than a basic roof, it is still quite simple, really. So there's a lot of things I can show you about the difference between my first build and my second build. The really important parts is the bottom layer and again the roof. So if you were to look back into the video and see the bottom layer of that build, I had a lot of stone around the bottom of these frames and inside of here, and it really did not look well. It helped the build some, but it made this bottom half of the build look really cluttered. And then the roof, I only had the roof I'd have the roof for one spot here, but there'd be no transition between the next part of the roof. Like as you can see over here, this is not a transition. This is just blocks I wrapped around here. And if we look around here, same thing over here, but it's really bad with that transition. I did have to fill this in a lot to make it work at least a little bit. And yeah, I'm going to show you back down here actually. This is what this looks like. It is a wall of blocks. There's 4 different blocks in this palette for the bottom part, and they're thrown in there, and then we have this thrown in here, there, and it doesn't really work out that great. But the frame is a really big important part of people's builds. So I'm going to show you some ways to do this. This is your most simple, just box frame, where you build a box and make it out of blocks. It's not that complicated really. Now this is the type of framing I like to use for my builds. If you were to go back over there again, you can see that there's a ton of U's, like an upside down U here, and U there. And as you can see, this U here kind of connects the roof together with the bottom part of the build, and it lets you pop out the second floor some without it looking overcrowded or big. And it's really helpful, and it served me well in most of my builds. And this here is just an idea I had. If you were to make a log cabin or something, you just logs here and then have what seems like kind of like a wood stack held in between them. Now here's another example of what not to do, and this looks cluttered, and even without all this stuff in the front, it still looks cluttered. It's just a random assortment of blocks. It doesn't look good. And this here just adds to the mess, really. But over here we have a better version of that. With the stone and this top part here, you have a gradient. But there's also this base block here that breaks up the ground and the actual wall. As you can see, we have that, but it's the same color as this top here. And base block doesn't just need to be a block built into the bottom of the wall. It doesn't have to be a block, it can be a couple blocks. It can even be a smaller set of the frame going around the bottom part of the build. To show an example of that, it really kind of looked like, just like if we had some fences like that on a bigger build, except for they don't blend in like that. That's how it would work. But then also over here we have an example of by far my favorite block, wood. Wood is probably the best. It has a ton of diverse types. You have all the different types of wood and all different types of logs, the stripped logs, all different like shapes and slight alterations. So if you just decide to use spruce or something on a build, the entire build look united. You'll have so many choices of what you can use the different counterparts and stuff for. And I just think that's a big beauty about wood. I really like that. Stone doesn't quite have that same thing. You have a couple alterations of each like really good type of stone. Then for just normal stone and cobblestone, you have like all the different types. But moving on, we have gradients, and they're really helpful because you can use 3, 4, 5 different types of blocks depending on how big your build is, and not have it look messy and like you kind of just threw it in a blender and turn it on and hoped for the best. It looks unified, and it really does help the movement of your build. If you don't know what that means, it's when you look at something like a piece of art and your eyes just kind of follow it, and you can look at it and stay interested for a while. And that's just a really important part of building for me. So using gradients like this, it's a really helpful asset that has helped many people make their builds look stylish and good. And again, this technique is really good. Not the best for really up close, because you can kind of tell between different types of blocks a bit more easy, but if you back up a lot, it really stands out and it really looks nice. And to have blocks in front of your main wall, I would definitely recommend using leaves and light sources, because the leaves, they're somewhat transparent and they give you a really good contrast between the oak log, the actual wall, and whatever else you might have there. And you can still use a wooden rubble at the bottom of your build if you really want to. I would just do it more sparingly, and I'd make sure you have it more in front of the beams and by the side, not just in front of the wall. But the light sources, they're good because they keep it lit up. If it's lit up and it's bright, it doesn't seem as cluttered, and that really helps. Another thing you can do, there's a way to texture your beam some without it making it look really weathered or broken. Even though this does look pretty weathered, it doesn't look broken and hopeless really. And it's to use stripped, the stripped variant of a log, and that's really good to use. But another thing you can do, which I forgot to make an example of, is you can wrap with like a trapdoor like this if you want to. Just choose one that's close to the color of the log, and it'll kind of blend in some. All these are really useful tips on how to keep your build from looking overcrowded or really unplanned and stuff. But you really need to make sure that you place your frame first, and you don't have to plan out the entire build, but you do need to have your frame down, then build your house inside of the frame to fill up the frame. And with the roofs, you really do need to have a uniform roof. Roofs are difficult, and I do want to do a video on them when I get better at making roofs myself. But I think that's it for my second building video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you didn't click out of the video already. And if you haven't, can you please give me some ideas of building videos I can do in the future? If there's something you really want to know how to build that you think I can build, then please tell me. Please let me know. I'd like some inspiration for some videos in the future. Thank you all for watching so much, and goodbye.